A little beggar girl rushed into the hospital and saved the billionaire's son. When the billionaire discovered the girl's true identity, he was shocked. "I know how to save your son." Ryder looked up, startled, his knees still planted on the cold, sterile hospital floor. The voice was small, too small to carry such certainty, but it sliced clean through the endless hum of the monitors and the stale weight of grief that clung to the room. He blinked, disoriented, trying to make sense of the girl standing in the doorway. She couldn't have been older than 9, barefoot, with tangled hair and a tattered coat that hung off her bony frame like it belonged to someone twice her size. Her cheeks were smudged with city soot, and her voice was too calm for a child. "What?" Ryder started, rubbing his eyes. "What did you say?" The nurse who had been adjusting Mateo's IV froze. "Sir, I tried to stop her. She just ran in from the hallway. The little girl ignored the chaos around her. Her eyes didn't flinch. They were dark and deep, like she'd seen too much for her age. She took a step inside, then another, her tiny feet making soft sounds against the polished tile. "I said, I know how to save your son," she repeated, slower this time. Ryder rose slowly, not out of anger, but confusion. He'd spent months chasing the finest specialists from across the country. He'd flown in 2 from Germany last week alone. Nothing worked. Nothing even moved the needle. Now, out of nowhere, this little girl appears with a voice full of faith and the smell of the streets. This is ridiculous," he muttered, turning to the nurse. "Get security, please." But before anyone could move, the girl walked up to the hospital bed where Mateo lay motionless. His skin was pale, lips tinged blue. The boy's chest rose and fell faintly under the machines that did all the work. Ryder froze, watching her. There was something about the way she moved, slow, respectful, almost like she was stepping into a church. "My name's Vanessa," she whispered, mostly to the boy. "I came because I believe." She reached out, without hesitation, and took Mateo's hand into her own. The girl's tiny fingers were dirty, trembling slightly as they brushed against his cold skin. "Stop! Hey! Hey!" the nurse hissed, stepping forward. But Ryder raised his hand. "No, wait." He didn't know why. Instinct, maybe. Or maybe desperation had broken him down enough that even this, whatever this was, felt worth the pause. Vanessa leaned in close to Mateo's ear and began to murmur something low and soft. Ryder couldn't make it out at first. Then he realized she was praying. Not like a rehearsed Sunday prayer, not like those fancy blessing words you hear at banquets or funerals. This was raw, broken, whispered like a secret between souls. Her eyes fluttered shut, and the entire room seemed to shift, just a little, like the air got heavier and lighter all at once. Ryder felt his throat tighten and his chest pull tight in a way he hadn't felt since the night of the accident. Then the machines started beeping, first one, then another, a different pitch, more urgent. The nurse spun around, staring at the monitors. Her eyes went wide. "His heart rate's spiking," she gasped. "He's responding to stimuli." Ryder's heart dropped to his stomach. "What?" "Sir, his brain activity, it's back. He's moving. Look!" And he was. Mateo's right hand, the one held in Vanessa's grasp, twitched, then curled gently around her fingers. Ryder stumbled forward and grabbed the rail of the bed, tears already brimming in his eyes. His son's lashes fluttered, and then, God help him, his mouth moved. "Dad?" It came out as barely more than a breath, but to Ryder it was thunder in his ears. He dropped to his knees again, this time not in despair, but in sheer, shaking gratitude. He pressed his forehead against Mateo's side, sobbing openly, not caring who saw or how it looked. Behind him, Vanessa stepped back, letting go of the boy's hand. Her eyes were soft now, as if what just happened was no surprise to her. "I just believed he'd wake up," she said gently. "That's all." Ryder sat slumped in the vinyl chair by Mateo's bedside, still gripping his son's hand like it was the last thread holding him to this world. The tears had dried on his cheeks, but inside everything still felt cracked wide open. A few feet away, Vanessa stood by the door, her hands folded neatly in front of her, eyes lowered. She hadn't moved since the miracle. The nurses whispered in the hallway. One of them asked if she should call social services. Another said something about a psychiatric evaluation, but Ryder didn't say a word. He just watched the little girl like she was made of glass and fire all at once, fragile and dangerous and somehow full of light. When he finally spoke, his voice came out low and uncertain. "Vanessa, how did you know? How did you do that?" She didn't answer right away, just looked up at him with those solemn eyes. Then, finally, she took a step forward and said, "I didn't do anything. I just had faith." "Sometimes that's all it takes." Ryder rubbed his temples. He didn't believe in things he couldn't buy or build or fix himself. He didn't trust coincidence, and he sure as hell didn't put stock in faith. But his son, his boy, was awake, alive, after months of hopeless silence, and the only variable in that long, dark equation was this girl. "You said your name's Vanessa," he said, watching her carefully. "Where are your parents?" Her gaze dropped again. She hesitated. And then, like someone peeling back something heavy from their chest, she let the words fall out. "My mama died 2 winters ago," she said quietly. "Pneumonia. We were living in one of them old buildings off Harper Street. Heat went out. No one came to fix it. She got sick and never got better." Ryder leaned forward, brows tightening. "That's city property, condemned years ago." Vanessa shook her head. "Used to be owned by a big construction company. They was supposed to help relocate folks when they tore half the block down, but we never heard from no one. One day the crews came. She begged 'em for more time. They told her she had a week. 3 days later, she was gone." A strange knot twisted in Ryder's gut. A vague, gnawing familiarity crept through her words. "What company?" he asked, already dreading the answer. She looked him straight in the eye. "Was called Redstone Group. You ever heard of 'em?" Ryder swallowed hard. Of course he had. Redstone was his legacy, his empire. Harper Street had been one of their earliest acquisitions when he was still grinding through backdoor deals and cutting corners to make margins. He hadn't thought about those projects in years. They were just numbers on spreadsheets to him, buildings that needed to come down, empty properties with no name and no face. Until now. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice trembling but steady. "After Mama passed, I did what I could. Been watching people, listening. I come here most nights, sit out by the hospital gardens. That's how I saw Mateo. I'd see you come in and cry, and I just felt like I needed to do something." "Why?" Ryder asked, his voice almost a whisper. She looked at him for a long second, then said, "Because you looked like a man who'd forgot what mercy felt like. And maybe that's why my brother's still out there, waiting for someone to remember." The room went quiet. It was a silence that crawled into Ryder's chest and stretched out. He stood slowly, still holding Mateo's hand, and crossed over to Vanessa. "What's his name?" he asked. "Sullivan," she replied. "He's real sick, mister. Real bad. I can't carry him no more. He just sleeps and coughs, and I don't know how to fix him." Ryder didn't respond. He just stared at her. This scrap of a girl who had cracked open the door to something he didn't recognize in himself anymore. Compassion? Guilt? Something else entirely? He didn't know what made him say it. Maybe it was her eyes. Maybe it was the weight of his own past staring him down. But the words came anyway. "Let's go find him." She blinked, surprised. "You mean now?" He nodded. Now. 10 minutes later, Ryder's sleek black SUV pulled away from the hospital's reserved parking space. Vanessa sat stiff in the front seat, too small for the leather seat, her fingers twitching nervously in her lap. She didn't speak during the ride, just gave him quiet directions. Left on Elm, 2 blocks past the liquor store, right by the lot with the rusted fence. Then finally, "That's it." The church. It wasn't much, just a shell of a building, old brick and shattered glass, with a faded cross hanging crooked above the door. Inside, the cold bit into Ryder's skin the second he stepped in. Vanessa moved quickly, weaving past overturned pews and mold-stained walls. In a back corner, buried under 2 threadbare blankets, lay a boy. His breathing was shallow, his skin almost translucent. "Sullivan," she said gently, kneeling beside him. "I brought help." Ryder stood frozen. The boy was rail-thin, cheeks sunken, the kind of sick you don't walk away from without serious care. He watched them both through glassy eyes, then gave the barest flicker of a smile before his head dropped back. Ryder knelt beside him. He didn't know what to say, so he said what came naturally. "We're getting you out of here, son." The SUV's heater hummed low as it cut through the silence. Vanessa sat cradling her brother's head on her lap, her small frame bracing his weak body with the care of someone who'd been doing it too long. Sullivan was barely conscious, his breath shallow, his skin pale like snow that never sees sunlight. Ryder drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes locked straight ahead, though his mind was miles behind. The road was empty, but his chest wasn't. Something heavy had settled there, something more than guilt, deeper than shame. "That place you all used to live," he said finally, voice gravelly. "Was it the corner lot on 7th and Harper?" Vanessa nodded, not looking up. "Used to be. They tore the roof off while we were still inside." He swallowed. "And your mama? She passed not long after?" "She tried to talk to the man in charge," Vanessa said. "He didn't listen, said he had permits, said we had 3 days, but it was already cold by then." Ryder's grip tightened around the wheel. The name Redstone Group rang louder in his head now than the rain tapping against the windshield. That corner lot was one of his earliest developments. Quick flip, cheap tear down, big profit. He didn't remember any faces, just signatures, contractors, spreadsheets. It was all about deadlines back then. Get in, build up, sell out. And now? Now that forgotten spreadsheet had a name. 2 of them. Vanessa, Sullivan. He pulled into the emergency bay behind the hospital, waved off the attendant, and scooped Sullivan into his arms like the boy was made of paper. The boy let out a weak cough that rattled in his chest, and Ryder didn't even flinch when it hit his shirt. Inside, nurses moved fast once they saw who Ryder was. Being a man of money opened doors, even when it couldn't open hearts. They wheeled a gurney in, slid Sullivan gently onto it, and Vanessa never let go of his hand. A doctor appeared, middle-aged, kind-eyed, confident. "Dr. Haley," Ryder said, motioning him aside. "Do everything you can. I don't care what it costs." The doctor gave a small nod. "He's in bad shape, Mr. Ryder. Real bad. But we'll do our best." Ryder placed a hand on Vanessa's shoulder. "I'm going to be right here." She looked up at him, tired but steady. Thank you, sir, for not leaving us." He tried to smile, but it came out crooked. While Sullivan was taken in for testing, Ryder paced the hallway. Vanessa sat curled in one of the lobby chairs, coat draped around her like a blanket. She didn't speak unless spoken to, didn't complain, didn't cry. When Dr. Haley returned an hour later, the news came in quiet, heavy syllables. "His heart's too weak," the doctor said. "It's congenital, been developing for a while. I don't know how he's lasted this long. Frankly, he won't survive much longer without a transplant." Vanessa turned her head slowly. "A heart?" Dr. Haley crouched in front of her. "Yes, sweetheart, a new one, and we'll put him on the list today. But you should know, it could take time, months, sometimes longer." Ryder stepped in. "What if there's another way? Private list? Paid access?" The doctor shook his head. "There's no shortcut here. Organs don't care about bank accounts. It's blood types, compatibility, time, and luck." Vanessa sat very still. Then she whispered, "He can't wait months." Dr. Haley's face softened. "I know." After the doctor left, Ryder stood staring through the hospital window at nothing. He'd built towers out of nothing, crushed competitors, twisted every system to work in his favor. But this was different. This was a wall money couldn't punch through. He sat beside Vanessa, arms resting on his knees. "I think," he started, then paused. "I think it might have been my company that caused what happened to your mama. Redstone Group. I founded it. I signed off on that site." She didn't flinch, just turned to look at him, quiet and clear-eyed. "I figured." He looked away. "I didn't know, I swear. I never saw names, just papers, projects." "I know." The words didn't sting like he expected. They settled in him like stones dropped in a pond, sinking, still, and silent. "I didn't come to punish you," she said. "I just want my brother to live." Ryder nodded, but something inside him cracked open right then. Not just guilt, but awareness, responsibility, and maybe the start of redemption. "I'm not going to stop," he said. "Whatever it takes, Vanessa. We'll find a heart. I'll call every hospital in this state if I have to." She watched him with eyes that had seen too much. "Then don't stop. Not just for Sully. For the others, too. Folks like us." He took a breath. "I won't." And in that quiet hospital hallway, where grief and grace met in equal parts, a man who once only built buildings made his first promise to build something better. The next morning came without sunlight. The sky outside the hospital was smothered in low gray clouds, the kind that hang heavy like unanswered prayers. Inside, time didn't move by minutes. It moved by monitors, by lab reports, by the slow, strained rhythm of Sullivan's breathing. Ryder had been awake all night. He hadn't left the waiting room, not even to get coffee. Vanessa had fallen asleep curled in a hospital chair, one hand still resting near the edge of her brother's blanket, as if even in sleep she couldn't let go. And Ryder, he couldn't stop moving, couldn't stop dialing numbers, couldn't stop hearing the beeping behind every closed door. By noon, Dr. Haley pulled him aside. "Mr. Ryder," he said quietly, "Sullivan's vitals are dipping. We've done all we can to keep him stable. He's hanging on, but he's fading, fast." Ryder stared at the doctor's face, searching for a sliver of good news, a wrinkle of hope, anything. Dr. Haley gave him none. "We need a heart," he said. "Soon." That's all Ryder needed to hear. He stepped into the hallway and dialed the first number in his phone, then the next, then the next. He didn't stop. He called hospitals in 3 states, spoke to surgeons, transplant coordinators, administrators, congressmen, reporters, anyone who might have a whisper of a connection to something that could save the boy. By mid-afternoon, there was a thread. A young man, 18, had been brought into a hospital across town the night before. Car accident, massive head trauma, declared brain dead that morning. Blood type matched, age matched, everything matched, except the family. The boy's parents were in the middle of a divorce, bitter and tired, barely speaking. His mother had signed the organ donation papers. The father had not. They needed agreement. No agreement, no transplant. And the clock was bleeding out. So Ryder got in his car. He didn't send a lawyer or a rep or some coordinator from the transplant team. He drove himself, tie loose, heart pounding like he was racing his own ghosts. At the hospital, the boy's mother met him in the family room. She looked spent, her eyes red, her shoulders bent. "He was our only child," she said. "He wanted to be a firefighter. He used to say, 'Mama, if something ever happens to me, I want my body to help somebody else.'" Ryder nodded gently. "Then I think I know who he might be able to help." The father arrived 10 minutes later. Tall, silent, eyes hard as stone. He didn't look at Ryder when he entered the room, didn't sit down. "No," he said flat. "I don't care what he said. He's mine. You're not cutting him up like he's a machine." "He's already gone," the mother whispered. "They said he's gone, Carlos." "I don't care," the man growled. "He's still warm. I won't have strangers gutting my boy." Ryder stood. "Sir, I know this isn't my place, but I need to tell you something." The man looked at him, furious. "I have a little boy in the hospital right now. He's not mine by blood, but he might as well be. He's 12 years old. His name's Sullivan. He's got a sister, Vanessa. Smart as a whip, stronger than most men I know. They lost their mom. They've been living in places no kid should. But they got this faith I can't explain. And that little boy, he's dying." The room went still. Ryder stepped forward. "I know your son was good. I know he wanted to help people. You said no strangers. Well, they won't be strangers. There'll be a boy who still believes in building things. There'll be a girl who's been praying for a miracle." The man's hands trembled, clenched at his sides. Then Ryder added, softer, "You won't be losing your son, sir. You'll be giving him a chance to live through someone else." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the father sank into the chair behind him, face in his hands. "My boy used to say he wanted to change the world," he muttered. "Said it all the time." Ryder nodded slowly. "Maybe this is how it starts." He signed the papers an hour later. When Ryder walked back into the hospital that evening, his shoulders carried exhaustion, but his steps were firm. Vanessa looked up from where she sat beside Sullivan's bed, her eyes filled with a quiet question. Ryder bent down, brushed the boy's hair back gently, and said, "We found one, kid. You just hold on now." Vanessa's voice cracked when she spoke. "Really?" He nodded. "Yeah, and it came from someone whose boy wanted to be a hero, too." That night, as the surgical team prepared the transplant, Ryder stood by the window, watching the city he'd helped build. Ryder didn't sleep that night, not even a blink. The hours dragged by like slow-moving freight trains, each one heavier than the last. Outside, the city hummed like it always did. Cars crawling down wet streets, sirens in the distance, the glow of buildings never dimming. But inside that waiting room, time stood still. Vanessa sat between him and Mateo, small hands clasped tight around theirs. Her fingers were cold, but her grip didn't loosen once, not even when the clock ticked past midnight. Not even when the surgeon came in at 2:14 a.m. and said it was time. They watched as nurses wheeled Sullivan down the hallway toward the operating room. His eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell, soft and shallow. Vanessa stood up, one hand reaching to touch his forehead as they passed. "You come back to me, Sully," she whispered. "You come back with that new heart, and don't you dare leave me alone." No one said anything else. They didn't need to. The next 6 hours were the longest Ryder had ever lived through. He paced the hallway slowly, as if walking could somehow beat the worry back. Every few minutes he'd stop and glance through the tiny surgical update screen mounted near the nurse's station, but it only showed vague notes. Vitals stable, graft preparation in process, circulation bypass initiated. It was all just noise to him. None of it told him what he really needed to know. Will the boy live? Vanessa never left her seat. She didn't cry. She didn't fidget. She just sat there as still as a chapel statue, eyes trained on the hallway, like if she stared hard enough, Sullivan would walk back out on his own 2 feet. And Mateo, now wide awake and quiet, leaning into Ryder's side, spoke only once. "Why's she so calm?" Ryder looked at him, then at Vanessa. "She's not," he said. "She's just brave." Around 8 a.m. Ryder's phone buzzed on the table beside him. It was a message from Charles Kim, one of his senior partners at Redstone Group. "The board's meeting without you. Shareholders are panicking. Do you want me to stall?" Ryder stared at the screen for a long while. His old life clawed at the edges of this new one like it didn't want to let go, but he didn't text back. Let 'em meet, he thought. Let 'em panic. Let the machine shake. Because right now, there was only one thing that mattered, and it sure as hell wasn't stock prices. At 8:43 a.m., the surgical doors opened. Dr. Haley stepped out, face pale with exhaustion, scrubs stained in the way surgeons carry the weight of both life and death. Vanessa leapt up first, her small body nearly colliding into the doctor's legs. "Well?" Ryder asked, standing slow, his chest tight enough to ache. Dr. Haley gave a soft smile, not wide, not dramatic, just enough to let them breathe. "The surgery was successful," he said. "The heart's beating strong. His body's responding well so far. He's not out of the woods, but he's made it through the hardest part." The air in the room shifted, not all at once, not like an explosion, but like the first breeze before spring after a long, bitter winter. Vanessa covered her mouth and let out a sound, half sob, half laugh, and buried her face into Ryder's chest without warning. He didn't flinch, just wrapped both arms around her and held her tight, one hand gently patting the back of her head like he used to do when Mateo was little and had night terrors. "You did it, sweetheart," he said. "You brought him home." Dr. Haley continued, "He'll be in the ICU for a while, limited visits, but you can see him, one at a time." Vanessa nodded fiercely, wiping her eyes. "I'll wait. Let Mr. Ryder go first." Ryder blinked at her, surprised. "You sure?" She nodded. "You saved him. You should see he's real." So he followed the nurse down the hall, past more closed doors and silent rooms. When they finally stopped at a glass-walled unit, Ryder saw him. Sullivan lay still, tubes and wires all over, but color had returned to his cheeks. His chest rose in even rhythm, driven by something that once belonged to another boy, a boy with dreams of becoming a hero, who had, in the end, become exactly that. Ryder stood there, hands tucked into his coat pockets. He didn't cry, he just breathed in and out, deep and slow, and whispered to no one in particular, "Thank you." The days that followed were quiet in all the right ways. Sullivan's recovery was slow but steady. The machines grew quieter, the nurses less urgent. The bruises around his eyes faded, and his fingers twitched more often with signs of returning life. His color deepened, his breath strengthened. Vanessa never left his side except to sit for meals Ryder insisted she eat. Even then, she'd take her food back to the hospital room just to be close. Every time Ryder stopped by, he'd find her reading softly to Sullivan, or humming some off-key tune, or whispering stories into his ear like she was weaving hope into the air between them. And Ryder watched it all. He sat back, hands folded in his lap, sometimes not saying much of anything, just watching the boy breathe, watching Vanessa believe, watching something inside himself continue to bend, soften, change. A week later, Ryder walked into the boardroom at Redstone's downtown tower. The air smelled like money and expensive cologne, and the windows overlooked the skyline he had helped build. 12 men and women sat around the long table, wearing suits that cost more than most folks' yearly rent. Their faces were pinched with confusion and worry. "Ryder," one of them began, "the press is asking questions. The investors are restless. You've been gone for—" "I'm not here to answer for my absence," Ryder said, calmly but firm. "I'm here to talk about the future." He set down a folder. Inside were renderings, plans for a new project. But this one didn't feature rooftop pools or valet spas. No marble foyers or gold leaf logos. This one showed small homes, low income, simple, strong, scattered with community gardens, school zones, and health clinics. "I'm calling it the parallel build model," Ryder said. "For every luxury tower we break ground on, we'll fund a mirror development for low-income housing, affordable medical support, or educational infrastructure. Real homes, real impact." The boardroom fell silent. "You've lost your mind," someone finally muttered. Ryder didn't flinch. "I've found something better." He told them everything, about Vanessa, Sullivan, the church, the operation, the father who let his son go so another might live. He didn't water it down. He didn't spin it into a brand pitch. He just told the truth, plain and honest. "I built a company that rose fast," Ryder said, voice lowering. "But I forgot who it stepped on along the way. I won't forget again." He paused. "I don't expect everyone in this room to agree with me, but I'm not asking for permission." Some threatened resignation. Some cursed under their breath. Some stared at the floor like the walls were caving in. But a few nodded. 2 days later, Ryder stood in front of a row of microphones with Vanessa by his side, her hand tucked nervously into his. Cameras flashed, reporters murmured. The press conference was being streamed live across half the state. He stepped up first. "I'm not here today as the CEO of Redstone," he began. "I'm here as a man who was lost and got found again, by a little girl with more courage than I ever had." He shared the story, again raw and unpolished. About Mateo, about Sullivan, about Harper Street, and the guilt he had carried too long without knowing. Then he stepped aside. Vanessa took his place behind the microphone. She could barely see over the podium. The crowd waited. The cameras leaned in. Her hands trembled, but her voice, when it came, was clear. "I ain't nobody special," she began. "I'm just a girl who prayed real hard. But sometimes prayers need people to help answer 'em. Ryder helped mine." She looked straight at the cameras. "There's more kids like Sully out there. More folks sleeping in places they shouldn't. More people needing somebody to care. We don't need more big buildings. We need big hearts." The room erupted in applause, not because the words were fancy, but because they were true. That night, news outlets dubbed it the Vanessa effect. A small girl with a tired coat and two big eyes had said more with 30 seconds of honesty than most CEOs could in a year of press tours. In the weeks that followed, something strange happened. Companies started calling, not just journalists, but builders, investors, even rival firms. They wanted to know more about the parallel build model. They wanted to see the blueprints. They wanted to do something like it. It wasn't overnight, it wasn't perfect, but something had shifted. Hope had gotten loud. And Ryder? He walked through the halls of Redstone now like a man reborn. He stopped carrying his phone into meetings, started calling his ex-wife just to check in. He read Vanessa's project notes every morning with coffee, pencil in hand, heart open in a way it hadn't been in decades. One night, while sitting by Sullivan's bed as the boy slept soundly, Vanessa leaned over and whispered, "You know, you're not the same man I met." Ryder chuckled. "No, no," she said. "That man was tired and sad. This one's trying." He looked at her and smiled. "You taught me how." She shrugged. "I just showed you where the light was. You did the walking." They came for him faster than he expected. It started with emails, a flood of them, some polite, some not. Shareholders demanding explanations, board members questioning his mental fitness. One called the parallel build model a reckless idealist stunt. Another accused Ryder of turning the company into a charity case. Within a week, 2 high-dollar investors pulled out. A partner in Chicago canceled a long-standing land deal. One news outlet ran a piece titled CEO Ryder's Redemption, Philanthropy or PR Spin. Ryder read every word. He didn't flinch, didn't shout, just sat on the edge of his bed one morning with the paper spread across his knees and a bitter kind of calm in his chest. He had expected this storm, but he also knew storms had a way of washing things clean. Elena walked into his office later that day without knocking. She never used to do that, but things had changed between them. The sleek, sharp marketing exec who once pitched luxury condos with champagne in hand now wore flats, her hair tied up, and a look on her face that said she was tired of suits who never saw past the dollar signs. "Ryder," she said, dropping a folder on his desk. "Here's what we're doing." Inside were press releases, ad strategies, speaking schedules, an entire campaign not about Redstone's projects, but about the people they were helping. Real faces, real names, real streets. "I thought you didn't believe in all this," Ryder said, arching an eyebrow. "I didn't," she replied, "but I saw Vanessa talk to a bunch of kids outside one of our sites last week. Saw what it did to them. I'm in now." He smiled. "Well, I'm glad you're here. We've got a long road ahead." They did. But they weren't alone. At the hospital, Sullivan's strength came back slow but steady. The boy had a way of smiling without showing teeth, like he knew too much for someone his age but still had hope to spare. Ryder visited every afternoon, and on one of those quiet visits, Sullivan looked up at him and said, "Mr. Ryder, I've been thinking." Ryder leaned back in the hospital chair, folding his arms. "Yeah? What about?" "We give kids houses, right? But a roof don't change much if you got nothing to do underneath it. I think. Maybe we could teach 'em stuff. Give 'em a job skill. Fix engines, cook, build things. Something they can carry." Ryder blinked. "You mean like job training?" Sullivan nodded slowly. "Yeah, that way they ain't just safe. They got a shot at a real life." Ryder sat back, quiet for a long moment. Then he chuckled, deep and warm, from somewhere buried in his ribs. "You sure that heart they gave you wasn't a professor's?" he said. Sullivan smiled again, a little crooked. "Nah, just a kid who got lucky." But Ryder didn't think it was luck. He brought the idea to Vanessa and Elena that same week, and both of them jumped on it like dry wood catching spark. They called it the Hands Project, a branch of the foundation that focused on skill building and mentorship for homeless youth. Vanessa insisted it include girls and boys. "We all got hands," she said, "and we all deserve to use 'em for something good." Vanessa had changed, too. She was still small, still wore the same old jacket sometimes, even though Elena had taken her shopping more than once. But there was something new in the way she carried herself. She walked into meetings now, spoke in front of rooms full of adults, told her story without stuttering. She'd look a man dead in the eye and ask him what he planned to do, not just say. She visited shelters and camps every week, sitting cross-legged on concrete with kids her age or younger, and told them how she once slept under pews and prayed for a miracle. She told them about Mateo, about Sullivan, about Ryder, and she listened, too. She listened more than she spoke. That's what made folks trust her. Some nights, Ryder watched clips of her on the news. Sometimes she was on school stages, sometimes at city council meetings, sometimes in the back alley of a housing site, hugging some girl in a dirty hoodie who just needed to know somebody cared. People started calling her the girl with the golden voice. Not because it was pretty, but because it had weight. You could feel her truth in it. "She's becoming something big," Elena said one evening as the three of them reviewed applications for new projects. "You realize that, don't you?" Ryder looked across the table at Vanessa, who had fallen asleep with her head on a stack of plans, a pencil still in hand. "She already is," he said. But for all the good, the opposition hadn't gone quiet. One former partner threatened a lawsuit. A group of real estate developers in New York accused Redstone of manipulating zoning laws for social gain. Some even started a smear campaign, digging into Ryder's past, trying to paint him as a hypocrite, trying to buy his way into heaven. Ryder faced it all with something stronger than pride: conviction. He no longer feared losing deals. What he feared now was letting kids like Sullivan down. Letting Vanessa down, letting himself fall back into the man he used to be. So when a reporter asked him one day, "Mr. Ryder, are you afraid this will all backfire?" he answered without hesitation. "I'm not afraid of failure anymore," he said. "I'm afraid of forgetting why we started." They showed up on a Thursday morning, signs raised, suits pressed, voices cold. Dozens of shareholders stood outside Redstone's headquarters downtown, not chanting, not yelling, but demanding. They called it a corporate betrayal, a misuse of company focus, a crisis of leadership. And behind those words was one clear message: pull the plug or step down. Ryder watched from the third-floor conference room window. His tie hung loose around his neck, coffee half-sipped, jaw tight. Next to him, Elena scrolled through social media feeds already flooded with hashtags like #boycott_Redstone and #profit over people. It had turned ugly fast. Inside the boardroom, 3 attorneys sat waiting with a lawsuit. They wanted his signature, wanted him to agree to pause all community projects, cut funding to the Hands Project, dissolve the parallel build model, and recenter the company's priorities. They said it was about saving Redstone's market value, but Ryder knew the truth. They weren't afraid of collapse. They were afraid of change. Across town, Vanessa was helping stock shelves at the new training center. It wasn't much yet, just drywall, second-hand tools, and a coffee maker that rattled like an old truck, but it was theirs. Sullivan, pale but upright, was there too, moving slow but smiling wide, handing out donated gloves like they were gold. Ryder could have made the safe call, could have signed the papers, settled the suit quietly, stepped back into the world that loved him when he played by its rules. But he didn't. Instead, he walked out to face the press. "I built Redstone with my bare hands," he said, standing beneath the shadow of the same glass tower that once symbolized success. "But I'm not interested in just building buildings anymore. We're building lives. And I'd rather lose everything doing something that matters than keep everything by doing nothing at all." The lawsuit moved forward anyway. It hit the courts in less than 2 weeks. It was ugly. Headlines buzzed with phrases like "CEO Ryder on the brink" and "Redstone's war within." Former allies took the stand against him. Numbers were thrown like knives: stock dips, market losses, projected risk margins. But something unexpected happened. People showed up. Not lawyers, not investors. People. The ones from shelters, from the first community site. Nurses who treated Sullivan, teachers who taught Matteo, workers who once poured concrete for his luxury towers now stood behind microphones and said, "This man changed my life." Vanessa gave testimony too. She stood before a judge and spoke in that same quiet, clear way that had moved city halls and boardrooms alike. "I don't know much about stocks," she said, "but I know what it feels like to have nothing. I know what it means when someone looks at you like you matter. Mr. Ryder did that, not just for me, for my brother, for a lot of us." The courtroom was silent when she stepped down. The final ruling came late on a rainy Tuesday. The judge dismissed the lawsuit, called it a conflict of ethics, not a breach of contract. Ryder would remain CEO. Redstone could continue with its social projects, unchallenged. He didn't cheer, didn't boast. He just walked outside, closed his eyes, and breathed in the rain. At the training center's grand opening 2 weeks later, Ryder stood in the back while Sullivan walked onto the small stage. The boy still moved slow, still leaned a little when he stood, but his voice carried clean. "This place," Sullivan said, "isn't just about learning skills. It's about remembering we're worth something. All of us." Vanessa sat in the front row, beaming, tears in her eyes. After the ribbon was cut, she grabbed Sullivan's hand and pulled him close. "We did it," she whispered. "We really did it." Sullivan nodded. "We changed the world, huh?" Vanessa smiled through her tears. "Yeah, I think we did." Behind them, Ryder turned away, wiping the corner of his eye. It wasn't the kind of success Wall Street knew how to measure, but for him, it was the only one that mattered. The morning was ordinary, but for Ryder, it felt holy. He sat at the breakfast table with his wife, coffee warm in his hands, Matteo chattering about schoolwork and new sneakers, the clink of silverware, the hum of an old radio in the background, a kind of quiet peace that had eluded him for decades. No emails, no investor calls, no weight on his shoulders except the smile across the table from a boy who once lay silent in a hospital bed. Later that day, Vanessa, Sullivan, and Matteo appeared on a local television show. The segment was called Faces of Change. The host called them the kids who changed a city. Vanessa wore a blue dress someone had gifted her. Matteo had his shirt tucked in tight. Sullivan walked on his own now. No cane, no help, just slow and proud. Ryder refused to stand in the spotlight, sitting off stage as the cameras rolled. "They're the reason we're here," he'd told the producers. "Let 'em speak." And they did, with laughter, with tears, with truth. When the broadcast ended, Ryder found Vanessa backstage holding a folder thick with notes and maps. "I've been thinking," she said. "There's other cities, other neighborhoods just like ours, places folks forgot. I want to bring the project there next, let it spread." Ryder looked down at the folder, then back at her. "You're sure you're ready?" She nodded. "Been ready." He handed her a key. "To the first satellite office," he said. It's yours now." Vanessa blinked, then smiled slow and wide, like sunlight breaking through. The story ended where it began, at Redstone's old boardroom. But this time, it wasn't filled with men in suits. It was 3 kids, sitting around a table stacked with blueprints and bagged lunches. Sullivan doodled ideas for a new classroom wing. Mateo mapped out a garden for the next housing build. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, flipping through applications, her eyes bright with vision. Ryder stood at the doorway and watched. He didn't speak, didn't need to. Vanessa looked up, smiled, and said, "We're not just building houses anymore. We're building people." Ryder nodded, heart full. In their faces, he saw pieces of who he used to be, who he could have been if he'd known better sooner. But now he did. And it was enough. This story is a deeply moving tale of redemption, compassion, and transformation. What makes it unforgettable is the emotional journey of Ryder, a wealthy, once detached man who slowly sheds his hardened exterior to embrace humanity through the eyes and heart of a little girl named Vanessa. His path from cold corporate ambition to selfless service is not only believable, but inspiring. Vanessa, though young and broken by loss, becomes a beacon of light. Her courage, faith, and quiet strength lead others, especially Ryder, to rediscover the value of empathy and responsibility. Sullivan's healing is not just physical, it represents the healing of a world that so often overlooks the voiceless. The most powerful lesson we take from this story is that real change begins with listening and acting from the heart. Wealth and power mean little if they are not used for good. In a society divided by class and comfort, this story reminds us that redemption is possible and kindness is transformative. It's not grand gestures that save lives, it's consistency, compassion, and the courage to do what's right, even when the world resists. This story isn't just fiction, it's a mirror, one that shows us who we are and who we could be. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it. Leave a comment to tell us how it inspired you, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. May God bless you and be with you every step of the way.